Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I'm Brian Nemhauser. You can find me and all that we do here on this channel, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Apple Podcast, Spotify, at Hawk Blogger. It is a Saturday, a Wildcard Weekend Saturday, and I could not be more happy to be joined by good pal, Jeff Simmons. Man, how are you doing?
I'm all right. I'm excited for today, man. It feels so weird the playoffs are starting and we're not even playing this week. So I'm trying to get geared up for these games.
There's a surprisingly large number of things to catch up on. I actually lost track of the fact that all pro voting was going to be revealed today. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the games. We'll also talk about the coaching carousel and what's kind of going on there. I got to tell you something. This came up from a specific listener who was really challenged by the fact that your poster on the back wall is not straight. Like they
it's probably just the angle. I'm just putting.
I actually, whether it's the angle or it's actually tilted, I'm glad that there is somebody out there tortured by their OCD because they see something on the wall that's not.
Isn't that the most on-brand thing for me though, to have like
it would be
on the wrong angle, or it kind of fits my whole being at this point.
It's so true. It's so true. Buddy, how good does it feel just to be here on a Saturday, playoff starting, and have zero stress about it?
It's kind of surreal. Like, I get so nervous for some of these games, and I don't know how you guys all feel, but playoffs especially when like these games, there's so much on the table for them. Like the fact that this team can win a Super Bowl this year. Yeah. And so to kind of get through this whole weekend, we get to sit back and watch and cheer against our least favorite teams and see who we're playing. We might know by today who we're playing.
Yeah.
It's just, as a fan, it's kind of the best.
It is. And I mean, there's plenty of places to go, and we'll talk about all of it. But increasingly, I think on one hand, we talk about the fact that, it's a young Seahawks team. Mike McDonald's just in his second year. There's a lot of reasons for hope that this team will continue to get better and improve and all that kind of stuff, right? On the other hand, it's like, look at the Lions 2 years ago and their coach and their stable of talent, and they never have really they've had really good years, but they've never really gotten back to that. And you can kind of do that across a number of teams, even the 49ers, who 2023 were a Super Bowl team and looked like they could have won it all. They have not really gotten back. I don't think they're going to get back this year. So you do have to take advantage of these chances. It's not often that all the things that you need to happen align to where you get the number one seed, only have to win 2 games, and both of them are at home.
No, I think the Niners are such a great example of just how these moments are precious, and you really got to take advantage when it comes to you. And they just have such a good collection in Seattle right now of young talent, veteran talent. It's a really good mix. And I remember when the Seahawks made the Super Bowl in 2013, the storyline going into that playoffs, or especially around the Super Bowl, was like, they don't have a lot of experience in the Super Bowl. The Broncos have all the Super Bowl experience. They had Champ Bailey and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't matter too much in the end. And the Lions are a good example because they were kind of built in a similar way, where it was so many drafted players in their first and second contracts, mostly first contract guys 2 years ago. And that team came out and they showed right away they can compete. And so I what I love about Seattle's team, and just not really what you're asking, but they have such a good mix of like first contract players those are the kind of teams you want to build around. And then the guys who like the DeMarcus Lawrence and the Leonard Williams and Jaron Reed. It's a really good mix. And so they really are set up just strategically for a run. But you're right. Like these chances, I know we have such a good coach and we have a young roster. It seems like they're going to be here for a while. But it's just this mix seems, and especially in like kind of a downfield this year, this just feels like such an opportunity for them.
It is. And I mean, I feel good. I feel good about their chances. I'm not overly confident. I know how hard it's going to be. I know I will never forget how good the 2013 Seahawks team was and how close they came to not getting to the Super Bowl. Like, that team is one of the best football teams I've ever watched play. And it was a sliver, it was a fingertip essentially that got him to the Super Bowl. And so it's not easy. You need some good fortune. You need some, health. You need all sorts of things to kind of go your way. But they're here. They're here. They're in a position to make that all happen. And I think you're right. Part of it's the leadership from the coaching staff. Part of it's the leadership from the players. I think it's got a good mix. It is interesting though. You think about the Seahawks and like they've got these veterans and they got the young guys, right? They got Leonard Williams and they've got DeMarcus Lawrence and Uchenna Nwosu, but they also have Nicky Manwari and Byron Murphy, all that stuff, right? For the most part, they don't have anyone with real playoff experience. Like Cooper Kupp is probably the main guy.
I was going to say Cooper Kupp and Ernest Jones might be the guys. Yeah. Ernest Jones was key in that Super Bowl run, and they don't have a lot of. Yeah, Leonard Williams was just talking this week with. I saw the Julian Love stuff where they made one playoff appearance with the Giants, and now I saw some Giant writer writing to you that they're still regretting moving on from Julian Love, but that was how they were able to get a bunch of these guys, and like guys who've been there. DeMarcus Lawrence, they hadn't had a ton of success in Dallas. They won a couple of playoff, like he was probably on that team when they beat Seattle in 2018, but they haven't had a ton of playoff success either. So yeah, you're right. They do have older players, but not a lot of playoff proven guys. And so the core of their roster is young guys who have probably never been to the playoffs or been once in 2022. And so it's going to be really interesting to see if that's an issue.
Well, let's talk about a topic that you and I have basically beaten to death for years and years and years. And I think you know where I'm going to go with this. It's blue chip players. Yeah. And we've talked about that the best teams in football, the Super Bowl teams, have not one, not two, but 3+ blue chip players on their roster. And the simplest shortcut for identifying blue chip players is not Pro Bowlers, but all pros. And for most people that watch this show know the difference, but in case you don't, Pro Bowl is voted like a third fan, third players, third coaches, something like that. It's a little bit of a popularity contest. The way the players even vote is pretty much it's not the greatest way to do it. All pros, and also Pro Bowl is the best players from the conference. So there's a lot more spots. All pro is the top handful of players at that position across the entire league. So if you want to be a first team all pro receiver, you've got to be one of the best two receivers in football, right? And so it's a little bit more meaningful. It's not perfect, but it is. And Jeff, they announced the all pros today. What happened with the Seahawks?
So the Seahawks did pretty well. JSN was a unanimous first team all pro, all 50 votes. I don't know when the last time that would have happened in Seattle. Probably some of the guys in the LOB, but certainly like Walter Jones. But 50 of 50 votes. That's pretty unbelievable. No other first team all pros, which was a little surprising, but a bunch of second team all pros. Leonard Williams was 10 votes out of a first team all pro. He was second. Devin Witherspoon was a second team all pro. Ernest Jones was in the top 4, so he was a second team all pro at inside linebacker. And then Michael Dixon. And then a few other guys who got some votes. Gray Zabel got 3 votes, which I thought was really, really cool. Nicky Manwari was the 4th voter at nickel defender. He was the 4th highest guy. Unbelievable there for a guy who missed a bunch of games, rookie. And AJ Barner got a vote, which I think is pretty meaningful. To be an all-pro voted player for a guy that was like supposed to be a blocking tight end, I thought that was really cool. And Byron Murphy was pretty down on the list. He didn't get much. DeMarcus Lawrence had 1 vote from what I saw. I don't know if Julian Love or Woolen got any votes. I'm guessing no. But
look, Kobe Bryant got a vote.
Yeah. Me and you used to talk about these all-pro lists as kind of like the flaw of the Seahawks roster. They had a lot of solid guys, but we weren't. And now we're coming back, and it feels like they got snubbed in a few areas. And that is everything about the transformation of this team, the transformation of Mike Macdonald, transformation of this roster. the fact that they could have had among the best numbers in the league is a huge factor, because these playoffs, you see it all the time. They're won by these kind of all pro level players. I say game wreckers a lot, but like when the Rams won the Super Bowl, it was Cooper Kupp and Aaron Donald. And you think about all these teams that Chris Jones has won games on his own against those stacked San Francisco teams. The Seahawks have these guys now, and it's a lot of the guys that we talked about. And now Zabel and Eamon Moore are getting all pro votes as rookies. It's really encouraging to what they've built already and where the team can go.
Yeah, and we'll talk about this in a few different ways, but my first reaction was 5. It's a good number.
Yeah.
Like that's more than I expected. I did not expect Ernest Jones to get one. I did not expect him to get in there. I thought that was great. I was most nervous about Leonard Williams, and I'm really, really glad that he at least got second team. I still think he should be first team, but okay, whatever. Witherspoon, his first all pro, and I think that's great. The fact that he's getting, I think, the recognition that he deserves there. Dixon was a little bit of a surprise to me. I don't know that Dixon was, one of the best punters in football this year for sure, but happy for him and certainly will take it. And so the number 5, I think, was pretty good. Like I'm not going to be disappointed. But then I immediately went to see where was Byron Murphy in the voting. And one of the things that's supposed to be different about all pro voting versus Pro Bowl is it's supposed to be a higher quality vote with more consideration and more thought put into it. The fact that Byron Murphy was so far down that list, honestly, like, it really pissed me off. I mean, people are not doing their jobs if they have Byron Murphy. Like, let's see, where was he on this list? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He's 11th.
Yeah, maybe
he's 11th. He's behind Jordan Davis. Now I will say this: if I'm Derek Brown of Carolina, I'm also pissed that I'm pretty far down. Kobe Turner, really good. I get it. But Byron Murphy's been one of the best 3 defensive tackles in football this year.
Yeah, Byron Murphy gets a raw deal there. Like, the fact that Jalen Carter has more votes than him is just, I know this is supposed to be a higher quality vote, but that's not a great sign, because Carter didn't play a lot of the year. And when he did play, he was hurt. And frankly, he wasn't very effective. And the whole spitting incident, he was never really, if you saw him play against Buffalo, he looked awesome. But still, the whole body of work to have Jalen Carter over Byron Murphy isn't just like a bad vote. It's just a sign that you're not following what's going on, because that's pure reputation. I wouldn't have had Kobe Turner. And I think this is why I get mad at Pro Football Focus and things like that, because Byron Murphy's a guy who in 2 of his best games of the year was graded in the 60s and graded in the 40s in one. In games where Mike McDonald, and I think that's how a lot of people analyze these players. And the weird part about Byron Murphy is he had counting stats. Like, he had 7.5 sacks. And the thing he did the best maybe was take on double teams and beat them, which is like the number one thing you want, because that made so much. And look, Leonard, all the guys who watch film, like Jeremiah's, they always say Leonard Williams is first. But I think Byron Murphy, just the stuff he does, he got sacks, he blew up game plans, he's taken on double teams. Mike McDonald has shown him out after several games. I think these 2 defensive tackles is the number one reason this defense is so good in run defense, and they could play that too high defense and stop the run. These 2 should be both been in the top 5. And yeah, I think Derek Brown had a good year. I know Cameron Hayward has had a really good year, but Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter should not be getting more votes than Byron Murphy based on the body of work this year.
Yeah. Another player that we didn't mention that got a vote, Robbie Ouzts. Did we mention him?
He got a vote?
He got a couple votes. Yeah.
That's surprising. But yeah, he's actually starting to come on a little bit, by the way.
I agree. I think his play has improved over the last. So I'm going to add that to this list, my little theory about Kennedy Palomalu being replaced with Justin Outen in the running back room, which includes the fullbacks. I just think that whole room's playing better. And I'm really curious how much that's going to carry over into the playoffs.
Yeah, just watching the two back, and what I noticed watching back some of the plays from last week is Ouzts was really like scrambling a lot. And look, it's a new position for him, very different. And even when he came back after that injury, he looked completely off. And now he's so much more decisive with like the angles he's taking and the blocks he's making and the power of the blocks. Like some of the best Charbonnet and Walker runs last week, Ouzts throws some really good blocks. And I think they still haven't even tapped into like getting him in space. I heard Hasselbeck talking about it with you. How they could have thrown that plate on the goal line to him, something like that. He looks far more comfortable playing fullback than he did really at any point during the year.
Yeah. Yeah. But like I'm looking through the rest of these lists. You know, Puka Nacua and JSN got all 150 votes. So it's not clear. We have no signal. There's some signs that Puka Nacua is going to win Offensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
And that's going to set me off. I'm just going to be really honest. Like that's going to set me off because when you have Matt Stafford throwing for you, when you have Devontae Adams across from you, when you have Sean McVay calling plays, that's a big difference between that and what JSN did, which by the way, more yards, like more efficient with fewer targets, doing it in this offense where nobody, like he had a historic season. There is no way Puka Nacua should be Offensive Player of the Year over him, and I'm already pissed off about it because I feel like it's going to happen.
Yeah, the worst part is it's going to be because of probably that Seattle game where he had like 230 yards and did it on national TV, where JSN's numbers slowed down a little bit in the second half relative to the insane stretch he was on. It still was 1,700 yards and 10 touchdowns. JSN should be Offensive Player of the Year, and it'll be very frustrating. I'm with you.
And then, I mean, I admit I was a little bit hoping to at least see a vote for Abe Lucas in the right tackle spot. You know, I didn't expect him to get an All-Pro, but I think he deserves more consideration. Like Colton McKivitz got 5 votes for San Francisco. Roger Rosengarten got 2 votes for Baltimore. I don't think those guys are clearly better than Abe Lucas.
Colton McKivitz got 5 votes.
Yeah. Terrence Steele of Dallas got a vote. I mean, Roger Rosengarten should not be getting votes over Abe Lucas. I'm sorry. There's just no way.
No, Abe should have been in the top 5 based on some of those names.
I agree. Zach Tom got 7 votes. The guy's missed like a fair number of games, although he is very good. But so anyway, like these are like gripes. But if you stand back and look, honestly, of all the teams in the NFC West, I think I'd probably be most pissed off if I was a Rams fan because it goes Seahawks with 5 All-Pros, 49ers with 3. And of course, that includes fullback Kyle Juszczyk is kind of this like throw in. And then you've got the Rams with 2 and the Cardinals with 1. They had Trey McBride. Quick aside that made me laugh this morning, Jeff. Just an example of how much of a shit show the Cardinals organization is. I went to each of the different teams' Twitter accounts because they had their All-Pros listed. And, you know, Seahawks had theirs. They had the special little graphic cards. The Rams had theirs. The 49ers had theirs. I go to the Cardinals, nothing. Like nothing. Like they're the only team that just like doesn't even recognize that they have a first team All-Pro or say anything about it. But I was a little surprised the Rams are being a little bit overlooked, I feel like.
Yeah, it's weird because the Rams, like, if you look at their team, they don't have a lot of like the blue chippers. Why? I was kind of a little lower on them than people were going into the year, and Stafford was obviously way better than I thought. And their offensive line, they're really like a sum of their parts kind of team. Like, they get really good play out of that offensive line, but I don't think they have any stars. Like Kevin Dotson, maybe, but I don't know if he's an all-pro level guy. The run offense with him, he would probably be the closest thing, but like I don't think anyone else on that line. Byron Young and Jared Verse had really solid years, but I think it just says how many good edge rushers there are that they weren't even close. Nope. I think they were like 4 and 5 votes. And again, I don't think that's a knock on those guys, but I'll look at the list now. Myles Garrett's going to be Defensive Player of the Year. Will Anderson's been awesome. Micah Parsons, Daniel Hunter had a great year. Nick Bonito in Denver. So it's not like those guys, Verse and Young, like could easily be all pro level players. It's just that position is loaded. And then you look like Quinn Lake got injured, and then you're looking around and it's like, other than the receivers, they don't have a lot of star power. And it's Stafford, it's Puka, it's a lot of solid. But I think that's kind of why some people have kind of backed off the Rams a little bit. They don't have those blue chip guys outside of Stafford and Puka. Jared Verse is a very good player.
Jared Verse is pretty damn good. Byron Young was leading the league in sacks for a while. He fell quite a bit off. Kobe Turner, I think, like that guy
was have good players across the board.
The game wrecker in the middle there. And then I thought a guy that was a sneaky one for them this year was Nate Landman at linebacker. The guy has forced, I think, more fumbles than anybody at the linebacker spot all year. I thought played a key role in a number of their wins.
Ross deal, because I'm looking at the linebacker list right now. You know who was ahead of him?
Bobby Wagner,
Devin Bush. Devin Bush has 3 All-Pro votes. That might be the most shocking thing I've ever seen.
Yeah,
he was still playing.
Yeah, that's wild. That's wild.
So bad.
So yeah, I mean,
but again, they have a lot of those kind of like, if you like rank the tier below of just like good players to very good players, they would have a lot of those guys.
Well, and then there's another way to look at this, which is the 49ers were second in the NFC West with 3 players. Those 3 players, Kyle Juszczyk, who's like 7,000 years old, Trent Williams, who's like 7,001 years old, and Christian McCaffrey, who's on the wrong, like pushing the wrong side of 30. So I mean, he's in his late 20s, but whatever. He's going the wrong direction age-wise. So I look at that and I look at the Seahawks and it's like Devin Witherspoon, Ernest Jones, who people keep forgetting is like 26 years old. And then you've got JSN, who's 23. And yes, Leonard Williams is on the older side. Michael Dixon's a punter, but a lot of these other guys, you talked about Gray Zabel and Robbie Ouzts and AJ Barner and some of the guys, that we make a case for, those guys are all new the first couple of years in the league.
And that's the thing with the 49ers. They have not drafted well, and they're still hanging on to that core, which the core they had in like the teams that were in the Super Bowl was insane. But they're all older players. And Trent Williams, George Kittle was banged up all year. Juszczyk, McCaffrey, it's a solid, like those guys are all good players, but it's not the group in 2 years you're thinking are going to be ascending. How much ascending talent do they really have? And even this year, the draft, they spent so many resources to try to stop the run, and they've had a bunch of injuries, obviously, but they're still one of the worst run defending teams in the NFL. And they spent high picks, Alfred Collins and Michael Williams, and Michael Williams is out, but CJ West, and it really hasn't made that much of a difference. And I don't see a ton of ascending talent on that team. And even like Malik Mustafa looked pretty good last year. He's taken a bit of a step back. Fred Warner's obviously incredible. He would have been all pro if he stayed healthy, but who are the young building blocks on that team? I don't know if there are many. Michael Williams is probably one, and
Dominic Pooney
will tell you how well the defensive tackles are playing, but I'm not sure I agree with that. The linebackers that are signing guys off the street, the cornerbacks are not particularly strong. I thought Upton Stout looked really good last week, and that he was one of the few guys that flashed. But on offense, the receivers are kind of journeyman types. Brandon Ayuk thing fell apart. Brock Purdy is really probably the biggest source of hope for that franchise. And if he played all year, he probably would have got a bunch of all-pro votes. But they have a lot of work to do to build that team back up.
Yeah, I look at the Niners. Maybe I don't know if this is more positively or less, but I actually like a lot of their young talent. I think CJ West and Alfred Collins and Michael Williams have something to offer. I think that, even Tatum Bethune has shown some flashes, and D Winters has shown some flashes. I think Renardo Green's a fine corner. I like Upton Stout. I like Malik Mustafa. Jair Brown's had some moments. Like, I like Dominic Pooney. Like, there's guys I like. But here's the key thing, Jeff. Almost none of those guys have blue chip ceilings. And so I hear people saying, oh, the 49ers are going to be like, they got a lot of young talent. They'll be really like growing into, they got to feel good about next year. And I'm like, I don't see Nick Bosa I don't see. I know they'll get those guys. I'm not talking about them specifically. I'm talking about Nick Bosa level talents, or Eric Armstead level talents, or DeForest Buckner level talents, or even Charvarius Ward level corners. Like, I don't see Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk level game breakers, or Christian McCaffrey level. Like, there's a lot of pretty solid starters to maybe can flash into above average, but I'm not sure I see a lot of guys that look like they're going to be a next, blue chip for that team.
No, and just looking at the Seahawks and 49ers the last couple of years are perfect examples of why that matters. We were at a game together in 2023 where the Seahawks roster looked exactly like how you were just describing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of solid players, no stars probably at that point. They were fine. They had a lot of those Jair Brown level players, which if you looked at the roster and you're not like they're a disaster. We had issues with some of how they were coached, but they were good enough to win 9 games that year. But it was a team that did not threaten anyone. And for the 49ers in 2019, they were a low-level team before that. They put Nick Bosa in there, and they put Richard Sherman in there, and they put Deebo Samuel in the same year as Nick Bosa. And that team goes to the Super Bowl with almost the same roster. And so then we saw them do it with Trent Williams and McCaffrey. To be competing for these Super Bowls, you need these blue chip players. And if you're a bunch of dudes, you're probably going to be closer to the 2023 Seahawks or the Russell Wilson Seahawks at the end, where you had a really good quarterback, but not much around him. You win a playoff game. That's kind of where I see the Niners once this generation goes, because again, what made the Niners so scary the last few years and why we were so nervous about them in the Super Bowl is their roster had more blue chip players than any roster I can remember, really since the LOB. And they had McCaffrey, Warner, Bosa, Trent Williams, Ayuk, Deebo, Brock Purdy. Like that team, those teams were insane. And then they had Buckner, and you saw how good he's been in Indianapolis. And Armstead has been really good in Jacksonville. And it's now they've started to slow. And that's why the draft is so important. But they had these rosters that were just next level. And now their guys are aging out. Nick Bosa is going to be coming off a serious injury for the second time. Fred Warner's getting older. Still some good players there, but I don't see that next generation I don't see anyone really blue chip level.
Yeah. And I look around the NFC West, and I think there's more reasons to be seeing the Rams, 49ers, Seahawks, the Rams, Cardinals, Seahawks as ascending than I do the 49ers. And even with the Rams, at some point, Matt Stafford's not going to be their quarterback anymore. And everyone's just assuming it's all going to be simple. Now, I've seen some horror movie predictions of, they'll trade 3 first-round picks or whatever they have to and get Joe Burrow. And if they did something like that, it would be on brand. It would be they would trade whatever it would take, and then they would be crazy good. But outside of a move like that team is a little bit on the precipice as well. So yeah, I feel like the Seahawks are not just in a good spot this year, but they should be able to sustain and build off of this going forward.
Yeah, and that's why I keep talking about their age of the team. And they're built to be good for a long time because they have that. They'd hit 4 drafts in a row, essentially, and some years with a ton of guys. And 2022, some of that's going to get washed out this year. They're not going to be able to keep a bunch of those guys. But all the talent they've brought in, and then they've added trades like Ernest Jones and Leonard Williams, who are both second-team All-Pros. The funny part, looking back, like some people hated the price of those trades. And look, I was definitely a little shook by Leonard Williams' price at first because he wasn't signed. I mean, there was Ernest Jones, but like getting that dude who's been like an all-pro defensive tackle for a second-round pick, it's kind of laughable that everyone was stressed out that we were worried about a second-round pick. Like this dude would be like, we don't even, he's been their best player for several years. Yeah. And so they have those guys, they have the draft picks, they've done well in free agency this year. It's a really sustainable core. And you look at, I still trust the Rams, even though Stafford is getting older. McVay's just shown he can do so much with different kinds of players, and Jared Goff and even Jimmy Garoppolo, like letting he played at the end of the year last year, looked competent. Like, I still believe in them because they have so many that young defensive line that's going to be around for a while. Puka and McVay. I think that's just a really sustainable situation. Their offensive line, they've shown they can adjust. They've lost coaches. Like, all the excuses I thought I would have made for McVay, he's kind of overcome a lot of them. He's been a better coach than I even gave him credit. I wasn't the highest McVay guy. Arizona is just a team I just don't take seriously. Look, even looking at their coaching search, you're seeing Klint Kubiak and all these big names. And have you seen like the list of guys Arizona's interviewed? It's like it's so depressing. There's nothing that would get the fan base excited. And when we're going through these coaching searches, like the thing that nobody talks about is the impact of the owner. And from most of the reputation around the league, Arizona's owner is one of the worst guys to work for in the league. He's cheap. He's difficult. He sucks. And when you have a bad owner, like you look at the teams that are sustainable, obviously, like a Cincinnati's been able to overcome it by getting Joe Burrow. That's one of the few situations. But like you look at the Baltimores and the New Englands and Pittsburgh and all these teams that have had historical, Seattle's had great ownership. That's a big, you don't need the best ownership. You can't have a joke. And Arizona's franchise, the whole thing just kind of feels like a joke. Like they had Kurt Warner overcome it and Carson Palmer and Bruce Arians and things like that. But every couple of years, it just reverts back to the same thing. And like even this year, going into this year, Arizona and Seattle were viewed at the same win total. I watched one of Mina Kimes' power shows where before the year, she throws out two teams to the guests and the guest has to power rank them based on who she throws out. And there was a great screenshot I took where she threw out Arizona and the Raiders and Seattle went after those teams. And on Monday, Arizona and the Raiders fired their coach and Seattle was the number one seed. So it was not a shot at Mina or anything. This is just very telling to how Seattle and where Arizona's going. And now Arizona's interviewing Vance Joseph. And they're interviewing like Jonathan Gannon's not getting any sniffs around the league. It's just they have talent. It's just I don't know if they can be able to put that together.
Well, I've got some news to share here in a second. Before I do, you may notice I've got a new hat. I also have this awesome JSN sweatshirt from Simply Seattle. I went over to the warehouse yesterday, got this nice little playoff beanie. There are playoff shirts. If you want the playoff hats, they've got the playoff hats. Let's see if we can get that in focus. That would be nice. Can we do that in focus? Maybe not.
Yeah.
Anyway, and we've got playoff NFC West. Let's see. There we go. Division champ shirts, all sorts of stuff. SimplySeattle.com. Use promo code HawkBlogger15. Get you 15% off. To get your best Seahawks gear, don't forget to do it. It is a great time. They just got in all their divisional gear. So go over to SimplySeattle.com and use promo code HawkBlogger15. Jeff, Aden Durde just got a second interview request from the Atlanta Falcons. So the Falcons will be interviewing Klint Kubiak today. They also will at some point be interviewing AD from the Seahawks. So good news for both of those guys. And I'll tell you this, there's a couple things that have gone on there that have my attention as we talk about the coaching situation. Matt Ryan gets hired as the president over for the Falcons, right? He's left CBS. He's going to take that over. I've heard some murmurs. I'll put it that way. I think that it's a pretty strong chance Klint Kubiak's going to end up in Atlanta. I think with Matt Ryan going there, I think that's a big part of it. I'm in the mindset now where like a couple of days ago, I kind of thought Klint Kubiak would remain in Seattle. I'm now in the mindset of he's probably gone.
Yeah, and you can see the way this cycle is a little different. There's not a lot of young offensive coaches in the NFL right now. And the fact that Klint Kubiak, who we weren't even sure was like going to get even head coaching looks, has 6 interviews lined up already. And within days, Baltimore and Miami have talked to him. It would be hard to think, unless he just comes out of these interviews, he isn't ready, or they go deep in the playoffs and they can't wait. Like it was so hard for Schneider to wait for McDonald that year.
Mm-hmm.
He had to pray for them to lose, literally. Some teams might not have the patience. Like even that cycle, Raheem Morris and Brian Callahan. But back to your original question, I even texted you this, I think 4 or 5 days ago. Atlanta was the one that worried me for Kubiak. And there's a couple reasons. And one of the reasons became true today. There was a lot of buzz about Matt Ryan becoming the vice president of operations. When Matt Ryan had the best years of his career, he won MVP. They should have won the Super Bowl. Kyle Shanahan was the OC there. That was the Dan Quinn team. I imagine going through his life experience in the NFL and seeing what Shanahan did for his career, I imagine he's going to want that for his team now. And who's the closest guy to Shanahan on the market? It's Klint Kubiak and now Mike McDaniel. So those are Kevin Stefanski's the guy. So then it came out that Atlanta, when they fired their GM, had all these search firms they're running. They're running separate search firms. And the guy who was on the search firm or the search committee was a guy named Rick Smith, who was the GM of Houston during the Gary Kubiak years. And so if anyone would know Klint, it would be Rick Smith. And so Matt Ryan's already started doing the coaching search. They interviewed Klint today already. And now Aden Durde's getting in there. So I think Matt Ryan's going to be very big in the organization. They haven't hired a GM yet. But I think if you think of where does it make sense for Klint to go, that makes a lot of sense. It's a weak division. It's a good owner. It's a situation where they can kind of really shape the program. They have really good skill players that can fit into his offense. They have a good offensive line. They don't really have a great quarterback. And Michael Penix is a weird fit. But that's the one that might hold you back there. But the Matt Ryan, Shanahan to Kubiak connection, and imagine they're looking for an offensive coach after what happened with Raheem Morris. And look, Aden Durde got an interview. Maybe Matt Ryan's come across him, has been impressed. But I think on the betting sites, Klint Kubiak is the favorite there. I know someone tried to look at that, and it wouldn't work in America, but in Canada it did. I think Brock Huard was putting on his Twitter today that he thinks Kubiak's going to go to Atlanta. I think that would be the early favorite.
Yeah, and I'm seeing some other news here. Rams defensive coordinator Chris Shula has been requested to be interviewed by the Dolphins. So we could have a Shula to Shula moment in Miami. That would be kind of poetic. Robert Saleh has also been requested by the Dolphins to be interviewed there. And so and they just announced here that the Falcons 45 seconds ago completed their interview with Klint Kubiak. So I kind of am of the mind, like we said, that Klint Kubiak's probably going to go. I want to talk about Robert Saleh and Chris Shula potentially also going. But before we get to those three guys combined, as far as what this means for right now, I think we've all been a little bit dismissive of, is this going to be a distraction for the coordinators? Are they going to really do their best work for this game? And I've been kind of in the mind of, nah, it's not going to be a distraction. I'm not going to give that as an excuse. But if it's really, I just didn't think that they would offer and potentially have him accept a job now. And if that's the case, or if they're pretty clear that that's where it's going, the human side of this starts to kick in a little bit, Jeff. Like, your family's going to move. You need to assemble a staff. Like, you're not going to be here next year. Like, even the most disciplined thinkers in the world, I can't imagine it won't sap some of his focus away from planning for the next game and the game after. Like, the longer they go, it might be a bigger issue for him. Like, oh my God, this is taking forever. What do you think? Am I overthinking it?
Well, you've seen sides of both. Like when Kyle Shanahan got hired by San Francisco, that was a handshake deal pretty early in the playoffs. Everyone knew that was happening. And they just had to, and they went through the whole playoffs. They did choke the 28-3 game away, and a lot of people blame Shanahan for that. So maybe that's not the best example, but he was able to get through this. And then Dan Quinn, when he got the Atlanta job as well, same sort of thing. That was a handshake deal that was done pretty early. I imagine he went through that. I think the thing with Kubiak that might help kind of revert what you're saying is that I think they still have to go through the whole process because they just literally hired Matt Ryan today and they're still going through a GM search. I think they're just doing basic interviews at this point, and then they're not going to be able to do like the next level. And the fact that they put out a Durde request, I think shows that they're doing a full-fledged search. And so I don't think it'll be at the point where like next week he'll have a deal in place. I think they're still going to have to hire a GM first, and they're going to have to go through the process. But yeah, it's scary. Like we saw what happened with Ben Johnson last year, where Ben finally decided he was going to pursue these coaching games, and they get in the playoffs, and he was doing these trick plays, and it felt off, and the offense we saw during the year never showed up. And look, that's the whole process of this coaching thing is so silly the way they do it, but it's a hard thing to manage. I imagine working for Mike McDonald, he's not going to let that happen. He seems like a guy you do not want to let down in terms of preparation and details, and he has some good people to lean on, like Rick Dennison's been in these situations. But yeah, as a human, like this is going to be the biggest job of your life. This is something you've strived your whole life for. I think every fan in Seattle is probably a little worried, is this going to distract him? Because this is it's not something we dealt with all year, and now it just gets thrown at you at the most important time. So yeah, I think you're justified in being nervous about it, but I think there's enough information where it might not hit right away.
Yeah, that's the only part of it that I hadn't really calculated, is this notion of him maybe knowing he's going before the games are played, as opposed to just the interviews being a distraction. I didn't think the interviews were going to be a distraction.
You imagine what a Matt Ryan, Klint Kubiak interview is like? That's the most boring interview of all time.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very fond of Klint Kubiak. I'm very fond of Aden Durde. I wish the best for them. I wish the best more for the Seahawks than I do for any individual. So that's where my mind always goes. Let's talk about we'll talk about the Shula and Saleh thing in a second, because I'm curious who you think is hurt most if one of those guys or all those guys leave. But before we get to that, I kind of want to talk about, who do you think, if Kubiak's gone, who do we assume goes with him, and who do you think like makes sense to replace? Like, I'll throw out one name that we haven't mentioned. Any chance that they go Kubiak to Kubiak and steal his brother from San Francisco, who doesn't have play calling responsibilities?
It would be a bold move. I would love it, but again, like go into the division, switch teams, but if he wants to leap into, I know there's been talk about him being like an up and comer in the league. You can't really be that if you're sitting behind Kyle Shanahan. I know McDaniel got hired like that, and a lot of people have been hired off McVay, but I imagine Clinton would put in pretty good words. So that would be an interesting angle. I don't know if that's something like that has ever happened, but I don't think it's far-fetched, but I would guess they go in a different direction.
What do you think? What are the names that come to mind for you?
The ideal name, and I don't think this will happen, is Mike McDaniel.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Mike McDaniel is going to be not only in demand potentially as a head coach. I saw he has an interview already with Tennessee, but I think he's going to have crazy demand if he becomes an OC. A lot of new coaches are going to want him, or apparently already Detroit, which is very fun personnel, has wanted him. But I think if you combine what Mike McDaniel can do with a run game with the same Shanahan system, there's continuity there, and you combine that with McDonald's defense, that becomes an even crazier thing to prepare for. I think Mike McDaniel is just a higher level play caller than Kubiak is, just in the run game.
Yeah.
So I think he would be the dream. I think Kevin Stefanski would be a really interesting guy if he doesn't get a head coaching job, because Stefanski's role model in the NFL was Gary Kubiak. And so there's a lot of crossover there. Stefanski's won Coach of the Year twice in the worst franchise in the NFL with Joe Flacco and some of these guys. I think to give him Seattle's infrastructure as a play caller would be a really exciting opportunity. I think those two guys, if they can slip through, would be ideal. I saw Jake Peetz is already getting interviewed by Detroit. I think Jake's been around McVay, and these guys, they didn't even consider him last year, so he wasn't a candidate. But if they want some continuity, him or Justin Aden would probably make a bunch of sense if they just want to be heavy. He's been an OC before. And then it's just, you don't know. It's a lot of the best offensive coordinators are either guys who haven't done it before. The one I wonder about is Grant Udinski, because he was a finalist last year. From what I understand, he's had a really good year with Jacksonville, and he's been the right-hand man to Cohen. They've been
Darnold.
He's not a play caller.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's on the list. Do you think Todd Monken's on the list anywhere?
Todd Monken would be on the list. He's very different in terms of play caller. He's probably closer to like a Brian Dable style play caller, but McDonald and Monken would have worked together in Baltimore, and they'd have a lot of crossover contacts, and I imagine they would have a pretty good relationship. Monken was reportedly the one where him and Lamar really didn't get along, so that might be a good sign. Maybe that's maybe it's more Jim. But with John Harbaugh out there, it's hard to imagine those two not pairing up again wherever he goes.
Yeah, I'm also thinking a little bit not just the now, but the future. And if the team believes Jalen Milroe is their future starter at quarterback, like who's got some experience with a player like that is, elite with his legs as well as potentially with his arms, with his arm. But I don't know. I'm interested. I think the Jake Peets is a guy that also has been requested by the Lions to interview for their OC job. But if Peets is around, he's in the mix. I think Justin Outen is definitely in the mix. And the fact that Outen has experience with offensive line, running game, and play calling, I think makes him a pretty interesting option. And I think you could imagine McDonald being like, man, I do not want to go back out and do this whole thing again. I want to run it back, want the same scheme. And like, so Outen, if he stays, that could make some sense. And then I do wonder, like, I'd assume Benton would be gone. I assume Dennison would be gone.
Yeah.
I don't know about Andrew Janocko, quarterback coach. I think he would be gone. I think he'd probably be his OC maybe for Kubiak. I don't know. But maybe there's a chance Janocko's in the mix somewhere as well.
Yeah, because look, this is if Klint gets this job, either in Atlanta or somewhere else, this is the biggest job of his career. He's been carrying these guys, not carrying, but he's bringing these guys from New Orleans to Seattle. So they're clearly very loyal to Klint. And so when Klint gets the biggest job, I think most of those guys are going to go with him. I think Clint's going to want the best possible infrastructure. I imagine Gary's going to want him to have a lot of continuity. And I think Janocko would probably go there as the offensive coordinator. And so they would probably have to really replenish quarterback coach, offensive play caller, offensive line coach, and then whatever Rick Dennison brings to the building. As it's a lot to lose, which is why I'm more upset about the coaching staff than really like the play caller. I'm very hard on Klint Kubiak, but I would love for him to be back, just to have the staff back. I think almost all those guys, maybe other than Aden, would probably go with him.
Yeah. And last thing just on this, we got other stuff we got to get to, but I feel like it's not as catastrophic as some people are making it out to be if this happens, that they're like, oh no, another new OC. It's not ideal. I think this is going to be different because not only did they get an OC that has worked this year, but they got a system that works. And now you've got an entire offensive line that's had a full season of learning this system, getting the foundational elements in there. You've got the receivers, the tight ends, like everybody has learned this system. I think they've got their system. That's a really big deal. And it's something that can persist past the coach that currently is calling plays. And so I think there's a number of guys in the league that have familiarity with this system. And I think that you can keep building even if it's not the exact same staff.
And that's why I think it helps, because there's so many different areas you can go to. When they were hiring Ryan Grubb, he was the only one running that system, and it was kind of a repeatable thing. Yeah, the whatever system that was. Now you have this Shanahan system. Like there's so many guys, even with the Rams. There's Mike LaFleur with the Rams. There's that up and coming. I think he's either the passing game coordinator or the quarterback coach. And Nate Shieldhouse, who's like an up and comer, who's going to hit OC interviews last year. Like they could go to him. They could go, and Cooper Kupp's been around these guys. Cooper Kupp was around Jake Peets. Like they have so many people they can lean into now. I think that they have this system in place. And McDaniels and Stefanski, they all came from the system. So there's so many more areas they can hire from. I think that is a way bigger deal than trying to scrap it. And that's where I don't love like the Monken thing, where even though they have continuity, he's just a unique at how he calls plays. I think keeping a building on this tree where there's other position coaches and other guys you can build in, I think that's what I would do, because they got the players to run it. They got the players we know are going to work in it. Like you said, the core players of this team, the running game, JSN, Barner, if Cooper Kupp's back, Cooper Kupp, Shaheed. Like Shaheed losing Kubiak would hurt the Shaheed thing, but they haven't really used him as a receiver anyway. So there's so many different elements to it where I think it's a lot more of a cleaner where you're going with this. And even like Grant Uninsky came from Kevin O'Connell and Liam Cohen, who are, again, trees off this Shanahan Kubiak system. So McVay, they're all trees off the same thing. So there's so many more directions you can hire. Kevin O'Connell, those guys, the name I keep seeing in like the chat, or people keep mentioning Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah,
That's not a fit.
no,
That's not.
no, that's
He's
not
a
fit.
Ryan Grubb style college guy. That's not going to work at all.
No, I mean, I'll throw a couple other names out. I mean, you said LaFleur for the Rams. I think he's an interesting name. I know that Mike McDonald has a lot of respect for the LaFleurs and the play calling there. And this is a far fetched one, maybe a little bit, Jeff, but Josh McCown over in Minnesota.
We liked him last year a lot.
I love that guy. I got a ton of respect for him, and he also has familiarity with Sam Darnold. So I think there's some interesting names. I'm not. It's a weird feeling. I'm not fearful about this transition the way I think some folks are. I'm happy for Klint if this all works out. And I'm really grateful that they were able to install a system that I think is going to be able to be a foundation for a while. So I think that's all good. So the question I keep almost asking you, if Robert Saleh and Chris Shula, the DC for the Rams, and Klint Kubiak all get hired away, which team in the NFC West is hurt the most by that?
I would say San Francisco. And the reason I say that is, I think Robert Saleh is really good. The fact that he had like a competitive defense this year with all those injuries, I think says a lot. We've talked on other shows that at one point I had him as the assistant coach of the year. Their defense kind of fell apart. The injuries were too much, but I think there's still a pretty good case for that. And the thing that's made it even more challenging is Shanahan's really struggled when he wasn't there hiring defensive coaches. They had Steve Wilkes, who's been one and done everywhere. They fired him after 1 year after the Super Bowl. They blew that fourth quarter. Last year, they had Nick Sorensen, the old Seahawks special teams guy. That was a disaster. And really, when he hasn't been able to lean on Saleh, seems like he just doesn't have that down. And it's not like there's the old Pete Carroll tree that everyone's trying to get to now. They tried to go Sorensen because they thought it was closer to Saleh, and it was awful. Their defense was horrendous, and they didn't have the injuries they have this year. And so, I think Saleh's a head coach level material defensive coordinator. I think he's going to get a job somewhere. And B, I don't know if they can replace him. So I think it's a double whammy. Look, the Seahawks thing, we just talked about the downside there. And the Rams thing with the Rams is they can just pull back Raheem Morris potentially if they lose Chris Shula. And so I think McVay's done such a good job at hiring coaches anyway. When they hired Shula, I thought, okay, maybe they get exposed here. And he actually ended up being better than Raheem Morris was as a coach. And in terms of like creative scheming. And so I think San Francisco is by far the most at risk.
Yeah. I don't know if I could say by far, but I actually think it's more harmful potentially. I think I agree with the 49ers being the worst in terms of the impact. And then I think I go Rams next. I think Chris Shula has been really, really good at what he does. And yes, they had Raheem Morris, last year. That defense wasn't nearly as good last year. Like they struggled in coverage concepts. They struggled in run defense. I'm not convinced Raheem Morris comes in here and is as good as Shula. So yeah, it's just worth keeping in mind all the different teams that are potentially losing some people. So everyone's in chat talking about Matt Hasselbeck. Like a lot of people at Matt Hasselbeck. I love Matt. Don't know. Like Matt is just getting his first year as an OC at a high school. I don't think it's realistic for him to go and become a professional football NFL OC.
I think I'm guessing from listening to your show every week, he really likes coaching with his brother.
Yeah.
And coaching at the high school level as like a pure teacher is one of the most fun things. And look, they lost their dad, their kids are moving around. I think him and his brother, I think he really cherishes the opportunity versus the high pressure world of the NFL where teams will turn on you in 1 second.
Yeah. I love it. I love Matt. I just don't think that's in the cards, at least for now. All right. We've got a few more things to get to. First, let's talk about these games, dude. Let's talk about these games. And we'll talk about them in the sense of looking at some sleeper picks here. Which game do you want to look at first? Rams, Carolina?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be thunderstorms right now. The game might even be delayed. What stands out to you in this game? Like, what players do you think are going to go off in this game? We've got, Blake Corum. We've got
tight ends. Like, is there a Terrence Ferguson in there? Is there a
receiving
Bryce
yards?
Young interception.
Receiving yards. Why isn't that showing up? Oh, there we go. So Colby Parkinson. You've got Tyler Higbee.
Ugh, I hate Tyler Higbee.
I
didn't have Ferguson in there.
They don't. I think Ferguson's been injured, so I don't know if he's for sure playing.
Parkinson one looks pretty good.
So you want like more than 90?
He seems to get the ball a lot.
That's a good call. What do we think about Tet McMillan? 57.
The weather's not crazy. I think Ted McMillan is a good chance to get over the top on those guys.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's talk. I think rushing yards is going to be key here for both teams.
Rico Dowdle's really fallen off a cliff. He
has.
Like, he had 2 weeks where he looked like the best back in football, and that seemed to be fool's gold. Because against Seattle in the last game against Tampa in that bad weather, he is non-existent.
Yeah. So do you think like
Bryce Young 17 feels like a lot
for rushing yards?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Let's go touchdowns. Do they have anytime TDs? Well, let's just do that. I like Rico Dowdle getting a touchdown today. I'm gonna give him a touchdown.
So Adams would be a good one too.
Devontae Adams.
But I don't want. Let's handle the Carolina. Let's go with the Carolina picks.
All right, so that's that. Now
the worst trio of picks we've ever put together. Colby Parkinson, Rico Dowdle, and
how do you think this game's gonna go?
I think it's gonna be very similar to. I think the Rams are gonna play close with them for a while. I think it'll be kind of similar to the Cardinals game. And then I just think the talent on the Rams is going to take over. And I don't think it'll be as bad as Arizona, where they're giving up like 4th and 20 fake punts and things like that. But I think it's going to be kind of a grinded out game early, and then just eventually, like the tight end set, and the Rams are just going to start scoring touchdowns that Carolina can't match. And I think Bryce Young's going to turn the ball over. So I don't have a lot of faith in Carolina. I know Kevin Dotson's out. That's hope. But last time they played, they needed 3, I think, Stafford turnovers, a couple 4th downs, and they won by 1 possession. And so I'm guessing it's kind of like the Seahawks Panthers game, where it's close a little bit. It's not going to be as low scoring in half, but just in the second half, the cream of the crop shines and they pull away.
Yeah, I mean, the Rams, I'll just say this. If the Rams don't win this game going away, yikes, man.
Yeah,
that's like you've had all of your wake-up calls. You don't need more wake-up calls as a Rams team. Like, go in there and beat a team that you are massively like the Panthers have like a negative 53 point differential in the season. They lost their 2 games to get into the playoffs and only got in because Atlanta, like, my God, if you don't win this game going away, like, there's problems. And I know they don't have Kevin Dotson yet, and we'll see. I don't think he was that close to coming back this week based on the people I've talked to over there on the Rams side. I don't know that he's certain going to come back next week. Quentin Lake's a big get. I think he's a huge thing for that defense. But man, like, I'm not expecting the Panthers to win, but if they make this competitive, that's a bad look for the Rams.
Yeah, the Rams are just such a better team than the Panthers. Like, it's crazy that if we lost to San Francisco, we'd be playing in like 2 hours.
I know.
I wasn't that nervous about that game because I don't think much of the Panthers. They've turned around a run defense. They gave Seattle some trouble in the first half, but they're just not a very talented team. So yeah, I think of the Rams, it's like everyone's waiting for them to flip that switch back, because the team we saw after the 4th quarter of the Seahawks game, since then they've been bad. They were bad against Atlanta. They were bad against Arizona. They end up pulling away, but they haven't looked close to their peak. And so this is the easiest opponent you'll ever see in the playoffs. It's a week 4 seed. They shouldn't have made. Atlanta should have won that division. The fact that Atlanta didn't win that division and winning 4 in a row is pretty embarrassing. But
yes, we are at the hour. Do you have a couple more minutes? You got?
I got some time.
Okay, all right. So let's talk about this Packers-Bears game where Josh Jacobs is supposedly back to health. They got Zach Tom back, which I think is a really big deal for that offense. The Packers are 1.5 point favorites in this game. It's supposed to be like the weather's supposed to be nasty, which I love. It's so fun watching bad weather games from your couch. So who do you like in this one? I mean, anyone stand out to you?
Player wise?
Yeah, let's start with player wise.
I think I'm going to want to look at the rushing totals.
Okay. Here is Josh Jacobs, DeAndre
Swift. I like that pick a lot. Josh Jacobs more than 59.
More than 59. I think that's a good call. I like Monangai.
I was going to say 44 doesn't seem like a big number either.
Because the Packers defense has just absolutely cratered. It's the thing that nobody talks about. Everyone talks about the offense because that's what everyone talks about. But
what's the Caleb Williams number?
Yeah, let's look at for rushing or for.
Yeah. Well, let's look at the passing numbers.
Okay, so here's 225 for Jordan Love, 210 for Caleb Williams.
It's tricky because I think with Caleb, it really comes down to what kind of game does that get into. If it's like a grinded out bad weather running the football game, I don't know if we'll see a ton of stuff. Yeah. I like where you're going with that one.
I'll say this. I know a lot of people are kind of high on the Packers winning. They are favored. I think the Bears are going to win this game.
There's a lot that plays into that. The Packers have not played well for a while now. Mm-hmm. Really, they went to Denver, and Denver kind of beat them up. And the Packers have not played a good game for a while. Josh Jacobs has been hurt, though. Love's been hurt. But when you combine all like the question marks on offense with the defense, and the Bears, like it's very clear what they do well. They run the football really well. Their offensive line had a really good year. Darnell Wright and Joe Thuney was first-team All-Pro. And when Caleb Williams can make plays off of that, and usually waits until the fourth quarter to do it, it's a very clear path of how they can win. Their defense, though, does suck. That's the thing. Like watching Detroit and San Francisco just be wide open time and time again, that's where I'm not ready to give them. Their defense looks like shit. And so I don't know what kind of shape Josh Jacobs is in. The Packers receiver core is always so weird. Some days they all look collectively amazing. Some days they look horrible. But if the weathers came down and they can't hit that Christian Watson deep ball, it becomes a real slog for them to move the ball now that Tucker Kraft's out and it's Romeo Doubs. And it's just not a very explosive. Matthew Golden's had a really disappointing first year.
Yeah.
And Colston Loveland has really come on for the Bears. Like he's one of the best tight ends in the league over the last month. So it's a hard game for me to pick. I'm really struggling, kind of feeling it out. I like the Packers because of experience, but I think if you actually objectively analyze these teams, I think the Bears have the edge. They're playing.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of storylines in this one in terms of a lot of guys that have not done well in the playoffs. Ben Johnson does not have a great playoff track record. Caleb Williams has none. LaFleur has not had a great playoff track record. Neither has Jordan Love. And so somebody's got to change the narrative.
I know. I think the most impressive playoff game the Packers ever played, they ended up losing that game to San Francisco a couple years ago. They should have won that game where that San Francisco super team, and we were so mad that they blew it. Really, they usually end up being the disappointing team in the playoffs. So,
well, you know what's fascinating about that, Jeff? Sorry to interrupt you. Is that year the Packers were like the youngest or one of the youngest rosters in football, and they were so close to beating that 49ers team. We were like, man, that team's going to be trouble. And now years later, like they've been like treading water and kind of regressed. And I remember at the beginning of the season, Albert Breer was on with me and he's like, I see the Seahawks and the Packers in the same bucket. Really young team with lots of good but not great players. Which of those teams is going to have guys step forward and become great? I don't think almost anybody, including me, as one of the biggest proponents of the Seahawks, would have said, oh, it's going to be the Seahawks that get 5 All-Pros and the Packers don't. Like,
especially after the Packers traded for Parsons.
Yes.
It seemed like he was going to hyperspeed everyone else.
Yes.
And that, well, now Parsons is out, but it really didn't have that impact. It was really only him, the guy, like the first time they played each other, Chicago and Green Bay, Parsons was an insane person out there. And they didn't have him the second time and almost won the game. So they haven't really seen anyone emerge. That's been the thing about Green Bay. They're still kind of stuck in neutral. Even the quarterback. We haven't really seen what is Jordan Love. We don't know at this point. And so, yeah, that is really interesting that I would not have bet the Seahawks would be the one to have And I think it says a lot about McDonald and the coaching staff and how they've been able to elevate guys like he did in Baltimore and turn guys to new levels. And the Seahawks have obviously drafted more star power than Green Bay always drafts, and Schneider's come from that. It's a very solid drafting team. They took a lot of guys on defense, but who are the stars of that team? It's Josh Jacobs and Micah Parsons, and not much. They had to acquire both of them from different measures.
Yeah. 100%. Quickly on San Francisco, we don't have to make our picks here, but this game is interesting in that I don't know if Trent Williams is going to play. Seems iffy. Lane Johnson, questionable for the Eagles. Is this an easy one for you? Like the Eagles, like the spread has been moving up. It's like 5.5 points. What's your take here?
Every time I've watched the Eagles play this year, I want to jam my head into a wall. And I've been so frustrated watching their offense. And even in spite of that, every time I watch them, like, this team's not very good. I still think they're going to win this game.
Yeah.
I think San Francisco's defense is just set up for a game for them to have success. And look, I think enough of Purdy and Shanahan going into the game last week against us where I was really nervous about that. And so I don't think they're out of it, but I think just like the Eagles, when they can dominate the middle of the field, and San Francisco's got 2 linebackers off the street, and playing in San Francisco after that game last week, playing in Philly after that game last week, I think it's going to be a tough game. I think Purdy's going to really have to play out of his mind, kind of what he was a couple weeks ago. I'd say I think the Eagles on the line of scrimmage are just much better than them right now.
What do you think? How do you feel if the 49ers won? Would you be happy? Would you be upset? Like, how would you feel?
So it all comes down to the Packers game or the Carolina game. If Chicago wins, I think I'm going to be potentially rooting for San Francisco. And I would like to play them again. And maybe that's stupid because Purdy might be like one of the best quarterbacks in the field. And I don't think much of I feel really good about how Seattle matches up with Philly, especially in Seattle. But again, my biggest fear right now, and I heard you making the case against this, is playing the Rams next week. And I think the Rams are just the team that I think scares me the most for sure. And so I think my rooting interest rapidly changed based on what happens today.
We'll all see how, for whatever reason, I think that I'd be happy if the 49ers won because it would make the Seahawks, everyone's like, oh, the Seahawks and the Eagles, same thing. And the Eagles will just do what the Seahawks did. I would like the Seahawks to like show differently than the Eagles. I also feel very confident about the Seahawks' chances against the 49ers. At the same time, there will never be a moment where the 49ers have their season end where I won't be happy.
Well, that's what I was about to say. Like, once the game starts tomorrow and I see that jersey and I see all those guys, there's not a chance in hell I'm rooting for them.
I don't like the Eagles much either.
I don't love the Eagles, but I kind of have a soft spot for how angry their fans are. I feel like that's in there somewhere.
They are curmudgeonly fans. Yeah, all right, I'm going to let you get out of here. I got a bunch of super chats to get to, but there's one super chat I got to tell you about that I think you'll appreciate. This person wants to stay anonymous, but they gave me a massive super chat over on Venmo.com/Brian-Nemhauser. And it says, I won a big bet on the Hawks winning the division at 8-1. Your off-season reporting gave me the confidence to make the bet, so I'm sharing some of the wealth. You don't need to read this on air, which I'm doing anyway. Just wanted to say thanks and love the content. So, I mean, if we could start taking some, portions of people's winnings, I'd be happy to be the recipient of that, Jeff.
That's really cool. And that's really cool that A, they're giving back, and 2, people are listening. Yeah, I think me and you were among 2 of the only people that had optimism about where this team was going. And some of the areas that we all thought would be trouble ended up kind of servicing back, where the receiver game wasn't super dynamic and some of the issues. But I think we thought, look, there's enough in here on defense, and the offense, even though it doesn't have the skills, the system is so good it can elevate. And Darnold ended up playing 8 weeks. None of us saw that coming, where he was an MVP candidate for 8 weeks. But we saw the offense, based on the coaching, should be more competent. Combine that with the defense, that's a really tough team to beat. And the team we compared it to during that offseason show, like some of those teams won playoff games, and the Jimmy Garoppolo teams, and they've exceeded our expectations. Like I was looking at some of our preseason picks in the Excel sheet the other day, but I'm glad some people saw it as well and saw it as an opportunity. And the biggest thing I think me and you saw was every offseason prediction show and every offseason rankings, and even like Kevin Clark, who I really like, did a show where like they did NFC tiers, and they had the Rams in the first tier, and the Seahawks were totally dismissed. And I think you did a lot of coverage on this. Is the Seahawks had a better point differential than the Rams last year? Like when they played last year, it took this much for them to win. Why are these teams being talked about at such different levels? And me and you could not grasp that really all summer. And the Rams ended up being way better than they thought they would, because I thought Stafford
they did.
So I will give them credit. I will say I was wrong, but I think that ended up playing out. Even when the Rams were peaking, the Seahawks were right there all year. And so that was kind of my takeaway. Where's the gap that everyone's seeing that based on the rosters, I'm not seeing? And so it comes down. I think everyone would say the two best teams in football going into the playoffs are the Seahawks and the Rams. And right now the Seahawks have better odds, home field advantage. So I'm glad people were listening.
God, this is gonna be such a fun weekend, dude. I'm like, I wish it was an hour and a half. Like I wish it was 1:30 already Pacific time, so we could start watching this game. It's gonna be a long time to wait. I'm gonna go through some super chats. I'm gonna let you get back to your family, and dude, let's have some fun. I'll see you on chat here on our own DMs in a little bit.
All right, please, Carolina, just do it.
That'd be fun. All right, everybody. Jeff Simmons at Real Jeff Simmons, one of the best in the biz and a good pal. Thanks for the super chats. Let's get to them. We've got one here on Venmo from Caleb Diaz. Says, Brian, I actually think Michael Penix would be a great fit for Kubiak. Been watching the Falcons this year. Coaching and his OC has a lot to do with it. A lack of development this year. Appreciate all your content. I never miss it. To be clear, I'm a huge Michael Penix fan. Like, big Michael Penix fan. I really like his game. He also operated out of the pistol formation like more than any other quarterback in the NFL. The Falcons offense was an outlier in how much they ran pistol. He's not an under center play action passer, and that is the core of the Klint Kubiak offense. So I don't think it's a great fit. It doesn't mean that Michael Penix is not capable of becoming that, but it's a projection, and he already has other things he's got to work on as a quarterback, because this wasn't the ideal year that I was hoping it would be for him. So I don't quite agree, but I hope it works out. If that's where he goes, I like both Klint Kubiak and Michael Penix, and I love Bijan Robinson and Drake London and like the whole crew. Like, I think that's a fun offense, and I'd love somebody to finally like unlock it. We'll see. Mason in Portland says, the last year University of Oregon made the Natty, the Hawks made the Super Bowl. Go Ducks, go Hawks. Mason, rough one last night. Rough one, dude. So sorry about that. All right, here on YouTube, we've got some super chats here. Bahadra, I don't know how to say this. I'm sorry. I'm not going to try to butcher your name. If there is any chance you would, is there any chance you would do a pod this week with Brandon from Hawks Nest, the NFC West Roundtable? Not sure if you have before. Actually, there was two on this. I don't know if it's the same person, but a different handle. Bradley 12 Hawk. Is there any chance you could do a pod with Brandon from the Hawks Nest? Not sure if you have before. You two, these sound very similar super chats from different accounts. I don't really watch those pods, so I don't know them that well. I've seen little clips. The reality is, I'm not looking for any more Seahawks people. Like, not that it's an offense to anyone, but I've got Jeff, Evan, Nathan, Derek, Dana, Griff, and Rob Staten, who, by the way, are going to be on tomorrow. We're going to bring back the crossover roundtable with Rob Staten and Griff Sturgeon tomorrow morning, so keep an eye out for that. Got Brady Henderson, Bob Condotta, John Boyle. Like, I've got so many Seahawks folks. I don't really feel like I need to add more Seahawks voices to this pod. If you like their pods, I'm super happy. Great. More the merrier. Nothing against these guys, but I will probably not be looking to add more Seahawks voices to this show. I do have a pretty friggin' cool lineup for next week. We're going to have, it's looking like we're going to have Mina Kimes. We're going to have Brian Baldinger. We're going to have Brett Coleman of Bootleg Football. We're going to have Jeffrey Dean Morgan again. Matt Hasselback. We're going to have Mike Sando and Dave Bowling. Like, we are going to blow this thing out next week with all the guests that I think are a little more rare for people to get a chance to hear their perspectives on the team, as opposed to ones where you can tune in and listen to their perspectives anytime you want on the Seahawks. So hopefully that makes sense, but I appreciate the super chats. Brent Yoendo says, allowing 1 second one SEC coach. What does this mean? Allowing one. I don't understand this. Feels like being punished for being 1 seed. Allowing 1 seed coach interviews is messed up. Feels like being punished for being good by teams that are mismanaged, and it could mess with morale. Yeah, I don't know. I don't hate the game. It's just the way it's the way for every team it's ever been. And the fact that the Seahawks are the 1 seed, the fact that they've got this roster, and when they drop players now, when they waive players, they're claimed. The last 3 guys that they've waived have been claimed by other teams. This is just the state you're in, and I'm happy to be here. I'm not going to worry about it. I understand why it feels a little bit bad, but you know what? If Klint Kubiak is excited to be a head coach and he gets an offer, then I'm just going to be happy for him. And the Seahawks are going to roll, because the fact of the matter is Mike McDonald is the straw that stirs the drink, and he's not going anywhere. So I have total confidence in Mike McDonald to take care of that. Derek is Japanese. Interesting handle. Says, the best hype videos in Seahawks history is the Rain City Redemption. Do you have contact with anyone involved with that might be able to make some new episodes with this new generation of Seahawks? Well, that's Will Cornell, and Will used to be part of our HB crew for a long time. Fact, trivia, he designed the Real Hawk Talk logo. So if you like that, that's more Will Cornell work. He works for the Houston Texans now, so he will not be doing any Seahawks hype videos, but he might see some Houston Texan hype videos. Neo Pangea says, in the same way the MLB has gold gloves for a utility player, the NFL should have all pro for a hybrid player. They do, as a matter of fact. They do. In fact, that was how Christian McCaffrey got named all pro. There's an all-purpose position, and McCaffrey was the guy that led that voting. He was actually 4th in running back voting. So good idea and already implemented. Casey Reynolds says, we may be seeing someone for a 3rd time. Could you ask your crew if the 3rd game plays more into better coaching, or is it just about players executing? I think that's a good question, Casey. I have similar questions about that. I mean, it's both. It always is both. There's fewer surprises in your third time meeting a team. I think the health of players is probably big. There's part of the reason I kind of like the idea of getting the Rams first, because you'll be rested. They will have just played an East Coast game in some bad weather. Hopefully it's a physical game. Hopefully it's taxing. They'll have a little bit less time to prep for the game next week. And the Seahawks will be self-scouting during this past bye week and going into next week. They could have some new things that the Rams are not necessarily ready for. So that could be the ideal time to get them. Honestly, there's no great time to play the Rams, because they're a really good team, and the Seahawks are a really good team. And it's a coin flip when those teams face each other. No matter what people think about the Rams, they dominated both games. Not really. The Seahawks had a higher success rate in both games. The Rams won the first game by 2 points, despite winning the turnover battle by 3. They lost the second game by 1 point, despite winning the turnover battle by 3. I don't think there's as much evidence that the Rams are way better than the Seahawks as people would like to admit. But I don't know. I'm not trying to duck the Rams. When it's time to play the Rams, let's strap it up and let's see what the Seahawks do. All right. Ziz Rashid says, Niners might have the talent. We did too with Pete and Klint. It's coaching and tuning these players to fit in what Mina says is the modern defense. Yep. All right. Last super chat here. Trippin Octo says, go Bears, go Eagles, go Panthers. Please win your games. Interesting. So you want the Panthers. And then at Hawk Blogger, appreciate you and your information that you've been given throughout the whole season. Thanks for all you do. Well, that's nice. I appreciate the appreciation. And folks, that'll do it for me on this Seahawks Saturday edition of Real not Real Hawk Talk. Hawk Blogger Mornings. Seahawks Saturday with Jeff Simmons. Make sure you give the show a like. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you follow us on TikTok, Instagram, all the places. 5-star reviews over on Apple Podcast are greatly appreciated. In fact, I want to check to see if we've got any new reviews. We're at 4.8, which is awesome. Would love a couple more 5-star reviews if we can get them. Here's a couple. Best Seahawks podcast out there. Love the energy, enthusiasm, positivity Brian brings to every show. He dives into great topics and delivers insights that true fans genuinely care about. Well, that is nice. Thank you, Dustin Prex. Here's one from Snockdoc82. All the way, exclamation mark. For years, I have been a bandwagon fan. Something clicked this year prior to the draft. Was it the masterclass by John Schneider, Mike McDonald, amazing culture, leadership? Was it the draft crushes like Zabel and Ouzts becoming Hawks? No, it was my daily, sometimes twice daily, coffee with Brian and his guests. The inside scoops, the unbiased but still fan-centric excitement about a team building and doing something special. Thank you for gifting me your time, your insights, and your excitement for this amazing season. Best content on any platform, period. Love it. Thank you. Honestly, super touched by reviews like that. It makes my day. Doesn't cost you anything to leave a 5-star review. I really appreciate it. If you're ever going to leave less than a 5-star review, let me know why, and maybe I can help with that and keep our 5-star review streak alive. All right, everybody, take care. Have a great rest of your Saturday and enjoy watching Wildcard Weekend.